Chare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Gopijana Ballava Giribaradhare. Gopijana Ballava Giribaradhare. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahangsa Parivrajik Charis Tadasasi Samad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki. Shri Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki. Sankirtan Yagya Ki. Go Premanande. All glories to the Sama devotees. All glories to the Sama devotees. All glories to the Sama devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 3, talks between Lord Shiva and Sati. Text 23. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yad Iyate Tatra Puman Apavrita Sattve Cha Tasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo He Adhokshajo Me Namasa Vidhiyate Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavrita Sattve Chatasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo Yadhokshajo Me Namasa Vidhiyate Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavrita Sattve Chatasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo Yadhokshajo Me Namasa Vidhiyate Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavrita Sattve Chatasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo Yadhokshajo Me Namasa Vidhiyate Sabditam Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavrita Sarve Chatasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo Yadhokshajo Me Namasa Vidhiyate. Ladies, Tasmin Bhagavan Vasudeva. Ekshajome Namasavadiyate. Tvam Vishudam Vasudeva Shabditam. Yadiyate Tatra Pumana Pavrita. Sattve Chatasmin Bhagavan Vasudeva. Yadakshajome Namasavadiyate. Sattvam Vishudam Vasudeva Sabditam. Yadiyate Tatra Pramana Pavrita. Dvechatasman Bhagavan Vasudeva. Yadakshachame Namasavadiyate. Sattvam consciousness, Vishuddham pure, Vasudeva, Vasudeva, Shabditam known as, Yat because, Iyate is revealed, Tatra there, Puman the Supreme Person, Apavrita without any covering, Sattve in consciousness, Cha and Tasman in that, Bhagavan the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Vasudeva, he because adhokshaja transcendental may by me namasa with obeisances vidhiyate worshipped. Translation: I'm always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, and it is a quite sort of substantial purport, so please listen carefully. The living entity is constitutionally pure. Asango hyayam purusha. In the Vedic literature, it is said that the soul is always pure and uncontaminated by material attachment. The identification of the body with the soul is due to misunderstanding. As soon as one is fully Krishna conscious, it is to be understood that one is in his pure, original constitutional position. This state of existence is called Shuddha Sattva, which means that it is transcendental to the material qualities. Since this Shuddha Sattva existence is under the direct action of the internal potency, in this state the activities of material consciousness stop. For example, when iron is put into a fire, it becomes warm, and when red hot, although it is iron, it acts like fire. Similarly, when copper is surcharged with electricity, its action as copper stops. It acts as electricity. Bhagavad Gita 14:26 also confirms that anyone who engages in unadulterated devotional service to the Lord is at once elevated to the position of pure Brahman. Mam chiyo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Therefore, that's 14:26 Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, Shuddha Sattva, as described in this verse, is the transcendental position, which is technically called Vasudev. Vasudev is also the name of the person from whom Krishna appears. This verse explains that the pure state is called Vasudev because in that state, Vasudev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. To execute unadulterated devotional service, therefore, one must follow the rules and regulations of devotional service without desire to gain material profit by fruitive activities or mental speculation. In pure devotional service, one simply serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a matter of duty, without reason and without being impeded by material conditions. That is called Shuddha Sattva or Vasudev, because in that stage, the Supreme Person, Krishna, is revealed in the heart of the devotee. Srila Jiva Goswami has very nicely described this Vasudev or Shuddha Sattva in his Bhagavat Sandarbha. He explains that Ashtatarashata, 108, is added to the name of the spiritual master to indicate one who is situated in Shuddha Sattva, or in the transcendental state of Vasudev. The word Vasudev is also used for other purposes. For example, Vasudev also means one who is everywhere or all-pervading. The sun is also called Vasudeva Shabditam. The word Vasudeva may be utilized for different purposes, but whatever purpose we adopt, Vasudev means the all-pervading or localized Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 7:19, it is also stated, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Factual realization is to understand Vasudev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and surrender unto him. Vasudev is the ground wherein Vasudev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed. When one is free from the contamination of material nature and is situated in pure Krishna consciousness or in the Vasudev state, Vasudev, the Supreme Person, is revealed. This state is also called Kaivalya, which means pure consciousness. Jnanam Sattvikam Kaivalyam. When one is situated in pure transcendental knowledge, one is situated in Kaivalya. Therefore, Vasudev also means Kaivalya, a word which is generally used by impersonalists. Impersonal Kaivalya is not the last stage of realization, but in Krishna consciousness Kaivalya, when one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is successful. In that pure state, by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., because of the development of knowledge of the science of Krishna, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All these activities are under the guidance of the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The action of the internal potency is also described in this verse as apavrita, free from any covering, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his name, his form, his quality, his paraphernalia, etc., being transcendental, are beyond material nature. It is not possible to understand any one of them with the materialistic senses. When the senses are purified by the discharge of pure devotional service, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. From Caitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 19:170. The pure senses can see Krishna without covering. Now, one may inquire that since factually the devotee has the same material existential body, how is it possible that the same materialistic eyes become purified by devotional service? The example as stated by Lord Caitanya is that devotional service cleanses the mirror of the mind. In a clean mirror, one can see one's face very distinctly. Similarly, simply by cleansing the mirror of the mind, one can have a clear conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 8:8, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, by executing one's prescribed duties in devotional service, Chaitasa Nanya Gamina, or simply by hearing about God and chanting about Him. If one's mind is always engaged in chanting and hearing and is not allowed to go elsewhere, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed by Lord Caitanya, by the Bhakti Yoga process, beginning from hearing and chanting, one can cleanse the heart and mind, and thus one can clearly see the face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva said that since his heart was always filled with the conception of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of the Supreme Lord's presence within his mind and heart, he was always offering obeisances unto that Supreme Godhead. In other words, Lord Shiva is always in trance, samadhi. This samadhi is not under the control of the devotee. It is under the control of Vasudeva. For the entire internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead acts under his order. Of course, the material energy also acts by his order, but his direct will is specifically executed through the spiritual energy. Thus, by his spiritual energy, he reveals himself. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:6, Sambhavam Yatmamayaya. Atmamayaya means internal potency. By his sweet will, he reveals himself by his internal potency, being satisfied by the transcendental loving service of the devotee. The devotee never commands, my dear Lord, please come here so that I can see you. It is not the position of the devotee to command the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come before him or to dance before him. There are many so-called devotees, Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. There are many so-called devotees who command the Lord to come before them dancing. The Lord, however, is not subject to anyone's command. But if he is satisfied by one's pure devotional activities, he reveals himself. Therefore, a meaningful word in this verse is adhoksaja, for it indicates that the activities of our material senses will fail to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by the attempt of one's speculative mind. But if one desires, he can subdue all the material activities of his senses, and the Lord, by manifesting his spiritual energy, can reveal himself to the pure devotee. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself to the pure devotee, the devotee has no other duty than to offer him respectful obeisances. The Absolute Truth reveals himself to the devotee in his form. He is not formless. Vasudev is not formless, for it is stated in this verse that as soon as the Lord reveals himself, the devotee offers his obeisances. Obeisances are offered to a person, not to anything impersonal. One should not accept the Mayavad interpretation that Vasudev is impersonal. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, prapadyate, one surrenders. One surrenders to a person, not to impersonal non-duality. Whenever there's a question of surrendering or offering obeisances, there must be an object of surrender or obeisances. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yad Iyate Tatra Pumana Pavrita Sattvecha Tasmin Bhagavan Vasudeva O Yad Hokshajo Me Namasa Vidhiyate. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarne Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, so it's a little complicated, not too much, but it is a little complicated. And of course, the purport is really quite extensive, which definitely to some degree is a type of indication of importance. Yeah. First thing to note, which may or may not have been clear, is that there are two words used kind of fairly repeatedly. They're repeated in the verse. They're repeated a number of times in the purport. One is Vasudeva, with the first A is short, Vasudeva, and then there is Vasudeva, and the first A is long. So they're related. Prabhupada goes to considerable length in the purport to explain how they're related, their relationship and how they are related. And seeing there is a Sanskrit class later today, I don't know who by, but somebody, okay. Anyway, it's an interesting point. Vasudeva and Vasudeva. Yeah. Vasudeva is a state of consciousness, and Vasudeva is also a person. So there are two things. But the connection is there, that from the Vasudev state of consciousness comes Vasudev realization, and from the Vasudev person comes the Vasudev person, Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes. So yes, it's very important. Vasudev, Vasudev. Sometimes devotees are not really so aware that Krishna's father, at least in Mathura, is Vasudev, and in that context, it's a sort of social practice, or it was a social practice, way back, in the days when Sanskrit was just a sort of popular language that people just used. So there was a practice that sometimes, I'm not aware of it being so common, but sometimes a father, in the father's name, the first A would be short, but then the son would have the same name, which happens, but the first A would then be long, and there's this context of one being the source of the other in that sense. So anyway, Srila Prabhupada explains here, well, Lord Shiva is explaining, or rather, Lord Shiva is trying to explain to his wife Sati the you could say inadvisability of going to attend the big social function and sacrifice of her father Daksha. That, of course, the history behind all of that we have gone through in great detail for the last couple of months. And just the last several verses or some number like that, we've seen how Sati is really anxious to go to that event. It seems more because she wants to associate with her mother, her sisters, and other friends and relatives and people like that. Not so much because there's a big yajna, big religious program going on, and to really get into the sort of the religious aspect of it. It's more the social aspect that, at least that she's talked about. And of course, because of the history with her father Daksha, Lord Shiva, and also, of course, because Lord Shiva is he's so intelligent, and he understands that Daksha still feels the same way. He's still extremely antagonistic towards Lord Shiva and very envious. So Lord Shiva is trying nicely, in a very gentle way, actually, very gentle way, to explain that, listen, it's not a good idea to go there because of this whole history and the way your father feels. And if you're going to go, then the consequences, anyway, we'll see in a verse or two or so, something like that. He actually makes the point that there's the distinct possibility of death occurring as a result of being exposed to Daksha's feelings of conflict. So Lord Shiva here, though, in this verse, is basically explaining how he's not really just an ordinary person, and he shouldn't be seen as an ordinary person. He shouldn't be treated as an ordinary person, because he is Vasudeva Shabditam, as he says in the verse, because he's always Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam, because he's famous, actually. Shabditam, he's known for being situated in the Vasudeva position, the pure transcendental position. And therefore, he should be understood to be offenseless, and therefore he should be listened to. She should listen to him. But as I think we probably all know by now, she's not going to. She's going to go, and she's going to die, as he has basically predicted. So in the purport, though, Srila Prabhupada, at some length and depth, explores this point of Vasudeva consciousness and Vasudeva consciousness arising from it, realization of Krishna arising from this Vasudeva Shabditam, Shuddha Sattva. The Vasudeva state is also a sort of synonym, one could say, is Shuddha Sattva. And Prabhupada refers to the term a number of times in the purport and elaborates in those terms that Shuddha Sattva is not just a material condition of some very nice goodness, special goodness, even more material, but even more special than just normal sattva gun, so to speak. It's a special type of state, materially, but actually, of course, Shuddha Sattva or Vasudeva Sattva is a pure transcendental state, completely pure and transcendental, and beyond even the touch of material goodness, even in its most pure state. In Bhagavad Gita, of course, Lord Krishna goes to some lengths to discuss the three modes and contrast them with each other. And it's very clear from that how sattva gun, the regular sattva gun, if we refer to it like that, how it's really a higher state than passion and particularly than ignorance. You know, sometimes people, or maybe even some devotees, sometimes confuse a little bit in certain respects, certain aspects of the mode of goodness with certain aspects of the mode of ignorance. No, they're sort of, anyway, they're kind of connections between all three of the modes to some degree. In regular sattva gun, the person is peaceful, undisturbed, and like that. And sometimes a person in the mode of ignorance, they sleep and they're feeling very sort of, no get up and go. And you may think, peaceful person, sattva gun. but it's tamagun. So this Shuddha Sattva, or Vasudeva Sattva, is a state of existence completely beyond the regular sattva guna of material life. It's a transcendental state of Satchitananda and a state of transcendental consciousness, and it is such a state, as Prabhupada describes here, and he refers to Srila Jiva Goswami in Bhagavat Sandarbha, that Shuddha Sattva state of pure consciousness is the state in which realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead takes place. And realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not really take place in any other state. Only that state of Shuddha Sattva. You know, we don't hear about Shuddha Rajas, and certainly not Shuddha Tama, but we do definitely hear about Shuddha Sattva. So it's very special. Shuddha Sattva is very special. In the purport here, Srila Prabhupada draws a parallel between the Shuddha Sattva state, Vasudeva Sattva state, and the state known as Kaivalya. This term Kaivalya, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, it's generally used by impersonalists. Kaivalya meaning like there's only transcendence, nothing else is present. But ultimately, Prabhupada makes the point here that ultimately, what is real Kaivalya is not actually that impersonal state of some impersonal realization of it's all one, or aham brahmasmi, these types of ideas. But really, real Kaivalya is not that. And so therefore, strictly speaking, for people to use the term Kaivalya in relation to that, the impersonal realization, it's not appropriate. It's not a proper use of the term Kaivalya. Because real Kaivalya means to understand the Supreme Lord and to enter into one's relationship with the Lord. That is actual Kaivalya. Like there's the verse, what is it, second canto, that Muktir hitvanyata rupam swarupena vyavastati. That mukti is another term used by the impersonalists more really. I mean, they focus on it more than the devotees do, although the devotees also use the term mukti sometimes, and that verse from the Bhagavatam is an example of that. Muktir hitvanyata rupam swarupena vivastati. Meaning that really speaking, this term mukti or kaivalya, because they're both used in the same sense by the impersonalists, but the real usage of the term mukti, liberation, or kaivalya, a transcendental state of liberation, the real use, the proper use, and the only proper use actually of that term mukti is swarupena vyavastiti. You can only really use it properly when a person is situated in their swarup, their actual nature. What is their actual eternal nature? Because even taking the term aham brahmasmi, that I am Brahman, we're all spirit, it's true, but what are we as spirit? Are we just spirit, and that's all there is to it? No, we are spiritual persons. And as spiritual persons, we're all the eternal servants of Krishna. And that's real mukti, real liberation. Because even in the rare cases where impersonalists may actually achieve Brahman realization, and I don't know when the last impersonalist, before today historically, when the last person impersonalist achieved actual liberation, when was that? I suspect it may not have been in this Kali Yuga. We know that Shukadev Goswami was Brahman realized. Of course, he became Krishna conscious. But since those days, who amongst the professed impersonalists has actually merged and realized themselves as spirit souls? Well, I think it was an awfully long time ago before someone actually reached that point amongst the impersonalists, although of course they like to talk about it. I remember when I was young, in the days of the Beatles, I've mentioned this many times before, that one of their much later songs right towards the end was the song with the, kind of interesting but pretty stupid name, I Am the Walrus. And in it, John Lennon says, I am you, and you are me, and we are all together. This is classic impersonalism. Well, not exactly classic, but it's definitely impersonalism. I am you and me, and we're all together. But actually it's just mumbo jumbo. It's just rubbish. Because I am me, and you are you. And we are sort of together in a certain sense, but we're not together in that sense, which is what he was trying to indicate. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada is exploring these points here, and it's very interesting, and it's very important, actually. It's very important for us to get these ideas clear and to really get properly situated in terms of the understanding of personalism versus impersonalism. And so then Srila Prabhupada goes on in the last part of the purport to explain how when a person does come to the Shuddha Sattva level, they're actually on that level of pure transcendence, then it's Vasudev Sattva. It's Vasudev Sattva. And then, so therefore, from that state, realization of Krishna comes. Naturally. Not that if you attain the state of Shuddha Sattva, really, real Shuddha Sattva, or Vasudev Sattva, that then as a result, you're going to realize simply the impersonal Brahman. No, it naturally follows that you will realize Krishna. But not just like you will realize Krishna yourself, like as if by your own effort you'll bring yourself to that point and then you will realize Krishna. But, as Prabhupada explains in the last paragraph of the purport, that if the Lord is satisfied by the devotee's pure devotional activities, he reveals himself. Krishna is always self-manifest. Krishna is never manifest by some other process or one's personal effort, something of that sort. Krishna only manifests or appears to someone by his mercy. There's no alternative process, but he manifests via his spiritual energy. He reveals himself to the pure devotees. And this is what Lord Shiva is saying here, that he, sometimes devotees on the level of Lord Shiva, like very elevated devotees, sometimes, and Srila Prabhupada did this a few times, sometimes they actually say, yes, I am a pure devotee of the Lord. I'm a God-realized person. It's not very common, but sometimes it happens. And here Lord Shiva is doing that. He's telling Sati that this is the level I'm on. I'm always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. This is Lord Shiva speaking about himself. And his idea, it appears at least, his idea is to influence Sati to think, oh, really? Okay, then I'd better do what you say rather than just follow my mind. And Lord Shiva does not tell her, listen, you're just not going. You're just not going. And that's it. You are not going. He doesn't say that. But in different ways, he's explaining how it would be extremely unwise to go. But in this case, his idea is, I'm actually such a person, you should listen to me. You should really listen to me. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Any comment or question? Okay, well, all right. Rangadevi Mataji first. Give her the mic.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just wondering if Lord Shiva is situated on that level, Vasudev level, or
Hold
Sudasattva.
the mic to your mouth, otherwise there's too much booming.
Okay, Lord Shiva is situated on the Sudasattva platform, and he gave the instruction. So Sati did not follow that, right?
Right.
So I'm just wondering if whether it was just like a pastime ordained by Krishna to teach us, or it was out of her own whims that she did it.
Or what?
If it was out of her own whims that she did it, like a,
Okay, I didn't quite get the last few words. But, or is Sati in Maya?
no one says she's in Maya.
I would say she's a little in Maya. Whether by her own just confusion
Okay.
or by the arrangement of the Lord for the sake of Leela making a point and like that.
Yeah.
But one way or the other, that's the problem, is Sati is not. She's bewildered. But, it's part of a whole pastime which there are different elements in the picture of the pastime as it unfolds. And certainly, by Krishna's arrangement, there's so much for us to learn. Yeah. And, like with Daksha, we should learn, don't be envious. If someone appears to be eclipsing you unexpectedly and you're sort of taken aback, what happened with this person? Keep cool. Don't just lose it. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But in this case, the point is, you got to listen to the right people. And Lord Shiva, in the case of Sati, as a husband, as the head of his own sampradaya, she should listen to him and not just her mind. I don't know if I'm addressing what...
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we get and Lokanath Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you. The question is regarding the state of Sattva Guna, Shuddha Sattva Guna.
Well, it's not Shuddha Sattva Guna.
Okay.
It's just Shuddha Sattva.
Thank you. Are there different degrees of being on the stage of Shuddha Sattva, just like there might be different degrees of realizing Krishna a little bit at a lower level of bhakti, or is it just you're either on it or you're not?
Well, yes, of course, there are different degrees. Here everyone is a devotee, and everyone is, to whatever degree, in Shuddha Sattva. Not too much, but, at least the element of Shuddha Sattva is definitely there. Otherwise, you can't be a devotee. You certainly can't be a practicing devotee on an ongoing basis without the mercy of the Lord, and the Lord's giving you at least a little bit of internal potency.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Gurudev. So we hear so much about impersonalism, just in the purports and throughout the literatures. What are the points that we should note when it comes to this? Why is it so important to note?
What are the points we should know?
Yeah, why is it so important that
why is it so important?
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a subject, but it's sort of, one aspect is that it's sort of, or part of, one of the last traps before Krishna consciousness. Yeah. There are people, they are progressing, developing, but then somehow they got deviated through contact with impersonalism. And even Prabhupada, there's a purport in Caitanya Charitamrita where Prabhupada talks about the followers of one Shiva Swami, who I don't know really anything about him, but they were devotees, but they became impersonalists somehow. And, you know, a really interesting thing. Advaita Acharya had 6 sons. 3 of them were great devotees. 3 of them became impersonalists. Yeah. 3 of them became impersonalists, headed by one son who was named Balaram. And they became impersonalists because they disrespected Lord Chaitanya. And they tried to really push this idea that because Advaita Acharya was sort of senior, you know, by age and from that point of view, therefore, he should be offered more respect than Lord Chaitanya, who was, so to speak, junior in a certain sense. And they became impersonalists. And just an interesting point, I was at Shantipur. I mean, I've been there many times, but many years ago means, I don't know, probably 30 years ago or 20-something. And I met with the chief devotee, chief person there. And I asked him, which of the sons are you descended from? And he said, Balaram. And I thought, wow, that's just really interesting. So, yeah, and different aspects of impersonalism are sometimes attractive to non-devotees. They can easily become attracted to certain elements, certain parts of what is impersonalism. Like, you know, again from my youth, Led Zeppelin, their most famous song, what was it, Stairway to Heaven? And at the end they sing, when all is one and one is all, to be a rock and not to roll. And gee whiz, you know, it's just impersonalism. And even, you know, in those days when spirituality was kind of somewhat popular, but a lot of it was impersonal. And then, you know, we see how just in day-to-day life, impersonalism has kind of permeated, it's entered into ordinary material life in different ways. Like, you know, here we are, we or most of us are, so to speak, South African. So we all know what apartheid is, what racism is. We all know very well. But racism, you can see it as having the influence of impersonalism in it. That, you know, one group, one race is the best, and the others, they're less. They're less. They shouldn't have the same facility. They shouldn't be taken so seriously. It's impersonalism. I mean, it's an aspect. There's the element of impersonalism in it. Racism, sexism, you know, classic sexism. The women are better than the men, right? No, something. Anyway, it's okay. But one of my, I don't know, great-great-grandmothers or something like that in England was a suffragette. I don't know if you know what suffragettes were. They were women who were fighting to get the vote because the men said, these women, come on, how can they vote? They just haven't got what it takes to make such decisions. It's impersonalism. Speciesism. The humans, we're the best, so we can just eat any other species, and because they're just so useless, we don't need to take them into consideration at all. It's impersonalism, because we're all eternal spirit souls. And on that level, which is the fundamental level of reality, we're equal. So like this, in different ways, impersonalism, sure, it's dangerous. It's amazingly dangerous, actually. Abortion, oh my gosh. That a person, until a certain stage within the womb, they're not persons. The person is not a person. So they can just be killed. And it's not only acceptable, it's good. There's a connection at least with impersonalism. Hare Krishna. Is that all? Oops, yes.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, Jai Sachinanda.
Haribol.
Oh, Haribol.
Thank you for the class. Lord Shiva is described in the Bhagavatam as there's like a contrast in he's sleeping in unholy places like graveyards and bathing in ashes, and he's associating with unsavory characters.
Right.
Like the pichachas and hobgoblins and ghosts. And yet he's described in this verse as very Surasattva, consciousness. Then I was thinking of another verse in Ishopanishad describes such apapa vidam.
Papa Vidam.
And in the analogy is given of the sun. The sun shines on dirty places, but is not affected by on the contrary, it purifies.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
That's very good. And last but not least, Mataji Ganga Mata.
Thank you, Maharaj. For someone who isn't on the level of Shuddha Sattva, when the body gets sick and weak and our ability to focus also may be disturbed, how do we give the same enthusiasm to our japa in those conditions?
Well, we may not be so much on, some Shuddha Sattva's there, but maybe not too much. But anyway, for ourselves, if or when, I think it's more when we get really sick, we should see how to engage in Krishna consciousness under those circumstances. Yeah, because if you're sick, for example, you could read more. I remember, I've told the story how I got arrested in London, one of the 50 or 70 times I got arrested for distributing Prabhupada's books, and they locked me up for the weekend and took my beads. and neck beads and Brahmin thread. And then the devotees brought me the 6th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. So I just read and read and read. Otherwise, if I'd been in the temple, I would have been really busy and not got so much chance to read. So we have to try and see how to utilize whatever situation, particularly if it's just an unavoidable situation. You're just caught in the situation. How to utilize it in Krishna's service. And if we pray to the Lord and try and think constructively, Krishna will give inspiration. That even though you're sick, you could read, you could chant, or something like that, which otherwise you might not have possibly been able to do so much. Something like that. And if nothing else, you can just think about, I must not get another material body because it's just too much, which is also true.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.